I witnessed the Israeli Defense Forces shooting at the crowds of Palestinians.
I think you hit one.
My professional opinion of how the sites were established was what I would describe as amateur. No idea of how to conduct operations of this magnitude. Without question, I witnessed war crimes.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Reacts. Today, we're doing a special Reacts because I saw the Tucker Carlson video, and apparently a U.S. Army Green Beret, I don't know if he's active or prior service, reveals shocking war crimes in Gaza over the delivery, or maybe lack of delivery, of humanitarian aid. Let's just go ahead and roll it. Let's get into it.
You didn't see Palestinians with weapons. You didn't feel threatened. I'm sure there's a threat there, but you didn't experience it. But you said that there was shooting. Who was shooting at what and why?
So to walk everyone through kind of how a distribution site works in terms of like, how are people being shot at? How does this happen? Because mind you, the Palestinians, to get to the south, they cannot drive. They have to walk one way from where they live because they have to go through the established military corridors, just one way to get to where they have to get to. They're walking anywhere from 8 to 12 kilometers one way to get to the site. So when they queue up in the morning and the queuing gets into the magnitude of thousands, the IDF hold them there with tanks in place. When the UG Solutions personnel call on the radio to the IDF to say the site is ready, the crowd is released in a massive tidal wave of people. It's dehumanizing and rushing towards the site because they're starving. As they're coming to the site, the IDF shoot at them. Machine guns, mortars, tank rounds, artillery, thousands of Palestinians rushing down to the site, and over their heads, you just see tracer bullets flying. Tracers, tank rounds.
Okay, so let's pause it right there. So a couple things. Humanitarian aid is one of the most difficult operations to do well, to execute well. And I say well, meaning without the risk like he's talking about, the risk to force, the risk to innocent people. One of the issues that has been talked about in this specific case is the amount of trucks that are being allowed to go in isn't enough. They need, as an estimate, around 2,000 trucks worth of food every single day to sustain the amount of people that are there. Right now, they're getting about 200 to 300 trucks in a day. Also, when you use a military organization to do a humanitarian aid intervention, it's not the best protocol. Now, you would want to do it in conjunction with elements that are providing the aid, but to use tanks, Bradleys, machine guns, etc., the reason they're doing that is because they're pulling security and they're trying to control the crowds, but they're doing so with machine guns. Now, one of the problems also is that Hamas is not facilitating this. In fact, they want the drama because the more drama there is, the more control they have. I am not on the bandwagon that Hamas is somehow good or some kind of empathy with Hamas because I know exactly what their tactics are. Their tactics are to inflate numbers, to create volatility on the ground, which leads to global messaging that somehow they're the victim. The victims are the innocent people in Palestine. Now, I don't know if this guy's in first group, but that Dietz picture behind him is of a first group flash, which is 1st Special Forces Group out of Fort Lewis, Washington. They have a forward deployed battalion in Okinawa, Japan.
Artillery rounds. And they do that to keep the Palestinians on the right path. So as they're coming to the site and they're getting shot at, it's dark. The Israeli forces in the south are reserve conscripts. They're not the IDF that are in the elite active army unit.
That's a good point. That's another good point. Look, I've been in the National Guard. I was in 30th Heavy Armor Separate Brigade in North Carolina for like a month before I transferred to 20th Special Forces Group. And being in a National Guard unit right after 9/11 scared the crap out of me. I was a team leader, E5, Ranger qualified, pretty experienced as a squad leader in the infantry. And I was looking around going, ooh, yeah. Now, there were some competent guys, but a lot of people were not competent. They were using it as a means to get a college education, which I don't blame them. But what I mean is, like, there's a distinct difference between active armed forces and the reserve and guard components of armed forces. One of the things to point out, too, is you see these guys running. It's like the strongest will survive because the most vulnerable of populations, the elderly and children, are they going to actually get this food? Hopefully some of these men that are running to get the food in advance aren't just getting it for Hamas, they're getting it for their families.
They're conscript reservists. They don't train. They don't get a lot of training. Rarely do they get to shoot their weapons, and they don't have night vision capability. So they're shooting into the dark at thousands of people when the sun rises and bodies are strewn along the road. And the IDF say, oh, we didn't do that. Really? How did that happen then? You did do that. Like, you did do that.
Without NVGs, without weapon systems that are able to see at night, how do they know they aren't firing into a crowd? And there have been videos released of innocent people being killed. Let's continue to roll this and see if there's any other good videos on this.
The head of the UN has said the starving of Palestinians is a moral crisis that challenges the global conscience. And Sir Keir Starmer has released a statement calling the images of starvation utterly horrifying. He says the UK will evacuate children from Gaza who are in urgent need of medical attention. Israel says it'll allow countries to airdrop aid in the coming days, but aid agencies say this won't be enough.
I just saw an interview recently where somebody was attacking a journalist talking about his position as Palestine was surrounded by the Israelis. Palestine on one side is bordered with Egypt. What are the Egyptians doing about this? The answer is nothing. What are allies in the region doing about it? Jordan, that has a large population of Palestinians. The answer is nothing. What is Europe doing about it? The answer is nothing. So all this falls on, for some reason, Americans, as if we're responsible for what's going on in Palestine. That's not the case. In fact, we have a lot of interest and influence in the area, but what are you going to do when the people on the ground that are the neighbors aren't doing anything about it? It makes me sick either way. But here's what I do know. Hamas is a terrorist organization that terrorized innocent civilians on October 7th. Despite that, understanding how warfare works from my own experiences, you can't win or quell this suppressing Hamas by just continuing to obliterate civilians into moon dust. You can't do that. And that's what's happening. Either occupy it, establish security, contain it, and work through the process, or don't. But this is out of my pay grade. I don't know what you would do in something so complicated that's been going on forever.
Israel controls the entry of supplies into Gaza. It says the starvation is not its fault, and it blames Hamas for stealing food.
This image of a starving boy and his mother in Gaza has been seen by millions around the world. His name is Mohammed. He's 18
What I don't understand is she looks well fed, and that child is starving.
months old, and he weighs 6 kilos. His mother, Hidayah al-Mutawi, has lost her home and her husband, who was killed, and Mohammed and many others will not survive much longer.
So that level of malnutrition, I heard an expert talk about this, and it's very true. That requires intervention, medical intervention. You just start dumping food in that kid, it's going to kill him. It's going to kill him because his organs are going to shut down because they can't handle the load because he's so taxed. His system is so taxed.
I think you hit one.
It was filmed by a US soldier who signed up for the operation in Gaza after he retired and left, he says, when he saw American colleagues and the IDF killing civilians. The soldier is Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar, a Special Forces veteran of the US Army's.
One of the things that he said he saw was contractors who they just said out loud, I think you hit one. I have personal experience working with contractors in 2006. One of the reasons we had resentment towards those guys is because we all said to ourselves in the team room, like, these guys are just doing it for money. They're getting paid $1,000 a day. They're doing it for money when they could be in uniform serving. And often, a lot of the contractors we discovered were thieves, were crooked. I wouldn't put it past a contractor to look at these people as if they're NPCs. They don't have human rights because they're subhuman. I've heard that opinion of many. It's like, yeah, man, you're frustrated. Yeah, I get it. Are these the people that you want to shit on? The people that are fighting for their country, that are fighting for their families? Let's not do that. And I saw it a lot. Unfortunately, I saw it a lot.
He's in Washington. I spoke to him from a spot just near the Gaza border.
I witnessed the Israeli Defense Forces shooting at the crowds of Palestinians.
Not that it matters distinctly, but he's wearing a Purple Heart lapel pin, which means he was injured in combat.
I witnessed mortar rounds being fired at the crowds of people to keep them controlled.
As a professional soldier with a very long career, what was your professional opinion of what was happening?
My professional opinion of how the sites were established was what I would describe as amateur, inexperienced, untrained, no idea of how to conduct operations of this magnitude.
You get a 18-year-old IDF reservist in a tank, and he's told, hey, shoot at anything that you think is potentially bad. He shoots at a vehicle full of civilians. It's a problem.
Without question, I witnessed war crimes by the Israeli Defense Forces, without a doubt, using artillery rounds, mortar rounds, firing tank rounds into unarmed civilians is a war crime.
Yeah, to use a mortar round and a tank round to direct traffic of people is insane. And mortar round impacts, it has a large kill radius. If the intent is just to maneuver people on the ground in certain ways and you drop a mortar, it's going to hurt or kill somebody. That's guaranteed.
So you're a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. You went to West Point. You got your commission in the Army straight out of West Point.
No idea why there's Russian subtitles. Just
You served for 25 years in the U.S. Army as a combat infantry officer and a special forces, a Green Beret officer. You were deployed 12 times to Iraq 3 times, Afghanistan 3 times. You were deployed to Syria, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Jordan, the Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam.
just to clearly delineate, not all of those rotations of the 12 were combat rotations. If somebody says, how many deployments do you have? Like, I have a lot of deployments. Most of my deployments were combat, but a regular special forces team in between combat operations, or they might even not be deploying in combat because their area of responsibility is not currently active in combat. They might be doing what's called JSETs. These are training missions to assist and advise, and might have some other mission sets internal to that main operation. But like Vietnam, Cambodia, Philippines, there were guys, for example, in 1st Special Forces Group that were deployed to the Philippines in firefights, getting injured and killed when nobody was talking about it because it wasn't a designated war zone. It happens. I've seen 10th Group teams get deployed to Africa and get in gunfights and kill bad guys, but it's often not talked about or discussed. So just giving you a little context, it sounds like he was a 1st Special Forces Group Lieutenant Colonel, West Point grad, seems squared away, 25 years of experience. He actually would be in my peer group with 25 years because I joined the Army originally in 1997.
You saw combat in many of those venues. You're highly decorated. You were wounded in combat, received your Purple Heart. You got a Bronze Star for Valor in combat, an Army Commendation Medal for Valor in combat. You were in Gaza from the 17th of May this year, 2025, through June 26th, 2025, which was last month.
It's human depravity. It's the oppression of dignity. It's the entire area, like for example, in the south in Rafah. I saw pictures of Rafah prior to the current war. And there were nice buildings, there were beach resorts, there were, street lights and neighborhoods, and now it is leveled to the ground. There is not a building that stands.
I could tell the level of grief of his description of this apocalyptic situation. Also showing him taking selfies with children and taking pictures of the situation, mostly of the civilians. When you have a full spectrum experience in the military, not just doing direct action and flying in helicopters and kicking indoors. That's some people's experience. A full spectrum experience of doing med caps, standing up a first aid station and helping the people in a humanitarian way, working with civil affairs and handing out blankets and basic necessities. You start to see the underside of this patina that's been destroyed over time, and this underside is full of innocent women, children, people who have nothing to do with this conflict, who are just caught in it because they exist in this geographical region or terrain. And I've seen that a lot. Like I remember going into Kamdesh, Barakout, these very remote locations on the northeastern Afghan, Pakistan, and even Chinese border, where people didn't have a sense of what was going on around them. They were just trying to get through each day with the basic necessities. And then all of a sudden a mortar round comes in and destroys their life, their families, their fathers, their mothers killed, and they have to pick up those pieces. So I get his perspective, and it breaks my heart seeing these innocent people and their lives destroyed. A lot of people, especially if you lost people on October 7th, you are supporting the Israelis, might look at that and say, well, they're getting what they deserve. No innocent people deserve anything like that. I could tell you that.
I would say that steps far over our international laws of how we persecute wars and how we engage in warfare, America is a part of it.
Do you see American weapons? Do you see American military personnel? I mean, how enmeshed in this are we?
So all of the contractors on the ground are Americans. We are in Israel, armed with fully automatic weapons and pistols and shotguns and stun grenades and machine guns, going into Gaza on a tourist visa. So if my grandmother wanted to go visit Jerusalem, she would be in Israel under the same status that I was.
Now, those negotiations are obviously done by the State Department to get approval, that get over hurdles like ITAR regulations, etc. But they could blanket approve contractors that have special operations backgrounds to come in without extensive protocols or oversight so they can get the job done. And that's what seems to be happening here.
Why is that?
Why didn't we do a B1 entry visa as subject matter experts invited by the government or under a different authority? There's various entry visa options. And it dawned on me that, oh, well, if you want to submit for a form of B1 or a different form of the B2 under a work visa, one, that's expensive. And two, that takes time. Coordinate that ahead of time. You know, when I use the term war crimes, people think that, oh, you're just exaggerating. Well, I'm well versed in the protocols of the Geneva Convention, the protocols of the laws of armed conflict, the protocols of international humanitarian law, because I had to know those things as an officer leading men in combat.
Yeah, this guy's a lieutenant colonel, so he would have been the equivalent of a battalion commander. He would have had 3 companies, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie Company, each with 6 ODAs, operational detachments, with a B team. And then he would have had his headquarters element. So he was running and managing a large, significant element that has its own lawyers, its own judge advocates. This is a guy who would understand these legalities and these types of things.
How many Palestinians have died in Gaza? Do we know?
I don't think anyone has a firm number that we can all collectively trust. I know that the Gaza Health Ministry has a number. I mean, I haven't been able to validate or verify that.
Yeah, the Hamas Health Ministry. Like, nothing can be trusted from these numbers. I mean, we saw it in the beginning of this conflict where Israel dropped a munition on a parking lot that was empty, and they said it hit a building and killed all these innocent people, and there was no evidence of that. But the national media ran with it, and they showed like a empty parking lot with a couple vehicles burned out, and they were saying there were casualties and didn't even show bodies. So let's just make that clear. Hamas runs the ministries, so terrorists are putting out information, and I would say all that information is false.
I know that one thing I can tell you for a fact is that people have been killed. I've seen it. Like, it's a fact. People have been killed. What the current population is now, I know that prior to the blockade, kind of the last census for Gaza that was taken in, I believe, 2018, the population was declared to be around 2.2, 2.21 million. What it is now, I don't know.
That's like the metropolitan area of Los Angeles proper, like Orange County.
But I would assume that the population has been greatly decreased.
Which extended beyond those initial borders would be tens of millions. But 2 million people in that square mileage is a lot of people.
Well, you know, to be fair, I do know why it's happening. I don't know why we're accepting it. I don't know why we're a part of it, because it's a war crime to do that. It is a war.
I'd like to get you guys' feedback on that, what he just said. Is it a war crime? Are we going to point the finger at Hamas? What should our role be in this? Should we be addressing and fixing this? My personal opinion is yes. My personal opinion is we're already vested. We've invested so many resources. We're giving Israel munitions that they're using to drop on civilians. Yes, they are targeting bad guys, but that targeting of bad guys is getting many innocent people killed. And now you have a humanitarian crisis where innocent women and children are starving to death. Why would we not do anything about it? So this dragging our ass and sitting on our hands, especially with how much investment we have with supposedly the most proactive administration in my history, what do you think we should be doing, if anything? Let me know in the comments down below.
To do that, it is a war crime to intentionally displace the civilian population on the battlefield in combat operations. What is displacement? Well, moving people from where they live to a place that they don't.
Just a little history lesson. See this knife right here? This is his Yarborough knife. Which means that he's in my generation. When I graduated the Q course and got my knife in 03, 04 time frame, the Yarborough knife, it was issued with your Green Beret, I believe, or with your tab. I can't remember. This would be a collection of his coins, which is just a representation of how many interactions he had at the command level, operating with different adjacent units, organizations, and that's about the size of my coin collection. That's a pretty good setup he's got on there. All right, I'm going to get into the last parts of this, which is the attempts to discredit Aguilar, which will happen. When good men speak up and they speak the truth, often these systems that are corrupt and broken go after them to silence them. And so I want to hear his point on this and close it out with what should the Trump administration do. So let's go ahead and roll it.
You came out and told this story, I think, 2 days ago, and your integrity was called into question. You're a liar. You're a propagandist, and this boy is not dead. This boy is not dead. Is what they said. Can you address that?
The picture that they used, that HF used and has circulated, the picture they have of a small boy with a contractor with his hands on his head, juxtaposed to the picture of me that I took with this boy standing next to me. What's ironic is that the picture they have of the contractor standing there with his hand on the boy's head, I took that picture too. It's like they're giving me back my own material as proof to the material. It's absurd. So the picture that I have, this picture with me, myself, and Amir and everybody on site, that is distribution site number 2 on the 29th of May. That picture's been geolocated, metadata checked. It's legit. The picture that they provided to say, oh, look, here's a picture of this contractor 2 days later with Amir. Disgusting. Disgusting. That picture that I took, the guy with his hand on the kid's head, is from site number 4 on the 1st of June. There is no way physically possible that the child could have gotten from site 2, sites 1, 2, and 3 are all the way in the south of the Morag corridor. Site number 4 is all the way in the central at the Nesarim corridor. Nobody can cross between those two areas. So unless he flew there or beamed him up and he transported there, that wouldn't be him. But number 2, you put the pictures right next to each other, not kind of like here and here, but right next to each other. It's obvious they're not the same person. They don't have the same hair. They don't have the same teeth. Their ears are a different size. I ran it through an AI generator and it said that's not the same person because it's not the same person.
Why would this humanitarian foundation, whose funding we know nothing about, you worked for them and you still know nothing about them, I'm sure.
Because of money. That's why. I saw contractors in my military experience stealing everything that wasn't bolted down because of greed. These contractors, when they got shut down, were fired, and every single thing that wasn't bolted down, they were shipping back home and stealing and bragging about it. To active duty service members who weren't making money, who were there for the job, the mission, the men, taking care of each other. It changed my entire perspective on contractors, contracting companies. When I was in 3rd Special Forces Group, we did a lot of work at Blackwater because we were contracted there. Similar to SEALs that have a contract with Mid-South, we had a contract with Blackwater. And so it's greed, it's money.
What should the Trump administration, what should the United States government do in response?
The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation should cease to exist. And here's why. The existence of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and its creation and existence creates a misnomer, a lie, that this mechanism is working and that the UN is not needed. That's a lie. Regardless of what we call the method, whether it's GHF, whether it's the UN, whether it's Greta Thunberg handing out PBJ sandwiches on the Mediterranean beach, whatever the method is, it has to be able to feed 2.21 million people a day, 3 meals a day, every day, and bring in water, fuel. The GHF aid brings no water, no Pampers, no diapers, no fuel, no medicine, no hygiene products, just dried food, nothing else, nothing else. So the method, whatever it is, needs to be a method that can handle the capacity of 500 to 550 trucks a day, every day, that can manage 400 to 500 sites throughout the entirety of Gaza. I mean, imagine if in the state of Florida, they said, hey, you want food, you got to come down to Key West. Everybody. Like, it's absurd.
Yeah, that just speaks to the scale of this problem. You can't do that with whatever it is, NGO, nonprofit, with 300 contractors with tactical backgrounds. Like, you need logistic support. You need a constant flow of food and aid. Oh, and by the way, that's a great incentive to end this thing because that's millions and millions and millions of dollars every day to feed that many people. But when you've displaced intentionally the Palestinian people, that's what your responsibility is. And look, I have no skin in this game. I'm not a Jew. I've never been to Israel, but I care about people. And I've seen the worst of war. The best of war is going after the bad guys that are responsible. The worst of war is the residual effects, the second and third order impacts on civilian populations. And this is something different because it's evolved into a humanitarian crisis that, if not fixed now, will end up being the most egregious, slow killing of a human population in recent history.
You know, the method that needs to be in place has to be able to service 400 to 500 sites in Gaza, needs to be able to service 500 to 550 trucks a day. That's the math. That's the math that's been done. And they need to do it every day. And they need to have experts in humanitarian assistance, doctors to understand medical assessments, veterinarians to look at the animals to make sure that we're not spreading rabies, all these things you don't think about that.
Yeah, a comprehensive plan, not just tactical warfighters on the ground pulling security over boxes of food.
Regardless of why it happened, when you shoot at civilians with tanks, mortars, rifles, machine guns, when you purposely displace the population, when you purposely use razor wire, again, razor wire banned by the Geneva Convention for the use of civilian purposes for hospitals, water points, and distribution sites. And that's what we're using, razor wire. And UG Solutions asked for that. When they did, I was like, whoa, step back, cowboy. That's not a good idea. That violates Geneva Convention. We can't use razor wire. Well, there's no difference. And I was like, there is. There's a difference between barbed wire, concertina wire, and razor wire. And razor wire is specifically condemned to the Geneva Convention to be used at civilian sites. Don't use it. IDF gave it to us. They said it was fine. Okay, so let's just rack up another war crime.
Yeah, I know exactly what this guy's dealing with. Incompetent contractors on the ground who are like, kill them all. They're subhuman. Who cares? And that's the problem with this situation. Guys, I want to get your feedback. Sorry, that was a long one. I wanted to go over some of the comprehensive details and getting this Green Beret's perspective. Respected Lieutenant Colonel who's taking a bold risk, going after Israel with all the volatility and all the toxicity that's going on. Hopefully the administration, hopefully Europe, Egypt, the partners, our partners in the region like Jordan, can do something about this and do it the right way so these people don't starve to death. I get it. October 7th happened. I understand. Hamas is a terrorist organization. But what are we going to do for those innocent people who can't help themselves? Deo presso liber is the Green Beret's motto, free the oppressed. Well, we need to do better. And kudos to this guy, Tony Aguilar, for speaking his truth and likely the truth. Till next time. Thanks, guys.